If you have said the words, I don't know if my relationship is going to last, or maybe you've even thought about the fact that your marriage may not survive, then I want you to have the opportunity to listen to real life stories from people who have been in your shoes. If you are in decision mode means you're trying to decide or figure out if you should stay or if you should go. You're trying to figure out if you should file for divorce or if your marriage can actually be saved. Then this is also the video for you. I've talked to real life divorcees who have been kind enough to share their stories with me about their experiences and the tipping point of when they knew that their marriage was over. So whether you're looking to poop or get off the pot, figuratively speaking, of course, or if you are just trying to glean as much information as you possibly can from others without telling everyone your business, then this video may be helpful for you. As a woman and a mom who was in a 20-year relationship, 13 years married, and a divorce and finance professional, I know a little something. And if you walk away from this video feeling more confident, or you decide that you want to share it with someone because you know someone who might need it, then it served its purpose. However, I am not telling you what to do. I am only providing stories and information to help you make a decision, like I said, because you might be in decision mode. Here's a couple questions you may be asking yourself. Can my relationship be saved? What should I be focused on? Am I paying attention to the signs? Relationships are hard. That's a fact. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. That is also a fact. So for those who have made it to the marriage mountaintop, whether they've stayed there or not, I think they are worth listening to, especially if they can help you figure out if your relationship is in danger. I just want you to know that every time I say the word danger, I think about the movie Ghost, where Whoopi says, "Molly, you in danger, girl." Now, if you've never seen that movie, then maybe I'm really old. But if you have seen that movie, then drop it in the comments and let me know. Anyway, I also want to let you know that I am sharing personal stories without naming names. I'm not giving you pictures. It won't be video. You won't know who they are. Why? Because it ain't none of your business. But also because I want to protect the identity of people who were kind enough to share these very personal, vulnerable stories. It is a verbatim account, but again, you won't know who they are. I also want you to be mindful of the fact that you're not going to hear their full story. So if you've heard the phrase, "we listen and we don't judge," then I'm asking you to use that here. Why? Because you're hearing about a piece of someone's story. You're hearing about the tipping point, the moment that they knew that the marriage was over, something that signaled to them to say, this is not going to last. Now, sometimes we know from the very beginning, before we walk down the aisle or we walk through the courthouse doors, or shortly after we say, "I do." So I want to share a couple of stories with you, and let's just see if you can relate to these. My divorce was somewhat unexpected. He just told me he wanted a divorce and soon after moved out. At the time, things weren't great, but I didn't see a divorce. But deep down, I didn't see a future with us being together. Here's the second story. Let me start by saying I should have known better than to marry him. He was very possessive, which I mistaken for love. I knew it was over when he became very indifferent to me. Exactly 7 years. I knew he was cheating. I called him on it and he admitted it. We got back together, built a new house, and he cheated again. The tipping point was him using my credit card to take her to a concert and dinner. Bottom line, he did me a big favor. Had I not known bad, I wouldn't know good. I feel like a story like that deserves a couple of snaps because it is very honest and very vulnerable. And maybe you can relate to it. Maybe not. Let's keep going. Another sign of trouble is change in behavior. Now, change in behavior can have a really wide spectrum because it just depends on who your partner is. Sometimes the change in behavior could also be with you. Examples of unhealthy behavior include things like emotional distance, sneaky, infidelity, problems with vices that you already knew existed, things like gambling or addiction, constant dishonesty. And again, those are just some of the examples. What we know is that a good, healthy relationship, a good, healthy romantic relationship, that is, includes honest, open communication, a deep level of intimacy, trust, and support. So if your relationship is missing those things or starting to lack those things, and maybe it feels more like a scene from What's Love Got to Do with It, then you know that there are some deeper issues there and your marriage might be headed for trouble. And that means you need to take action sooner rather than later. I want you to listen to 2 more experiences and just see if it's something that you can relate to. I knew it was going to end a divorce when he started going out to shoot pool at night, and he would come home at 2 or 3 3 in the morning. Then he would go to the grocery store to get cereal and come back home 3 hours later with grapes. We married about a week before our son was born, and we divorced when he was about 4 years old. I had been avoiding the inevitable for years. The tipping point was him telling me he was attending the side chick's son's funeral when he supposedly hated funerals, and he hadn't gone to one in the 18 years we were together. As you listen to these experiences, you may not relate to the entire part of the story. Maybe you relate to pieces of it. Only some of it sounds familiar, and that is totally fine. However, I do want you to be mindful of how you're feeling as you listen to them. So if your heart starts to beat a little different, or your breathing starts to change a little bit, or something just begins to come over you that feels a little heavy because you can relate, then I want to take this opportunity to invite you to grab the Divorce Support Pack. The Divorce Support Pack was created by the Firm Approach to help pre- and post-divorce women. If you think you might be headed in the direction of divorce, then the Divorce Support Pack can help you figure out the allies who can support you. It can help you figure out how to talk to and communicate this really big decision to your family and friends, along with other things. The intention is just to give you a little bit of peace of mind because you might have a really big decision to make. The link for the Divorce Support Pack is in the description below. All right, let's get back to it. Communication is a big piece of a healthy relationship. I've already said that. There's a direct correlation between good communication and good relationships. That's how important it is. What that basically means is that if your marriage is filled with silent treatments or just the inability to have effective communications, then that means it is a clear sign that there is something wrong. But because communication issues are so common and it doesn't always mean that you're headed for trouble, I wanted to give you a few tips that maybe you can use. Tip number 1, ask for permission. Ask for permission to discuss hard things to ensure that the timing is right. Number 2, try to frame negative statements with we instead of you. So for example, you could say something like, I know we are having an issue with this thing. I think we should work together to try to solve the problem. Instead of just saying, I know you are having an issue with this thing, even if it is that. And tip number 3, as my Uncle Larry would say, pause and collect your thoughts. The art of the pause is powerful. And I just want you to be very mindful of the things that you say and make sure that you're listening and that you understood correctly before you respond. Now, if you just listened to those tips and you were thinking, I am not doing any of those things, then again, it could be another sign of trouble, and that's cool. You do you. The next thing that we have to talk about is money. Why? Because we should always talk about money, but we should definitely talk about money if you think that that is a root or underlying cause of issues in your marriage or relationship. There are a lot of different signs that point to trouble related to money in a marriage, but there are 3 that I want to point out here. When you begin to argue over little things, and what I mean by little things is little expenses. So when you buy a book from the bookstore or Audible or lattes, that may mean that there's a deeper underlying issue that you need to address. If you have clashing money personalities, that could also be a sign of trouble. Not necessarily something that you can't work through because it's okay to do things differently when it comes to money, but there still needs to be alignment in making sure that you're pursuing your we goals together. A lack of a shared vision or a unified vision as it relates to money and how you approach money in your marriage can definitely lead to bigger problems. And if money is used as a power move, then that's also a sign of trouble. Just because someone is the breadwinner, whether they're the primary or the sole breadwinner, should not be a weapon used against you. A marriage should include transparency and respect, regardless of who's making the money, because it is supposed to be a partnership. Here are 2 more perspectives to see if it might be a sign of trouble in your own relationship. My first husband was not bringing home the money, and I had to hunt him down on paydays, constantly cheating. The final straw was when his girlfriend called my house with information on their engagement. My second husband was too mean and controlling, and I cannot be controlled. I suspected he had a serious mental health condition after our first child was born because he wanted to control me by not letting me work and controlling all of the money. When I did get a little part-time job waitressing, he came in and caused a commotion and got me fired. When I was pregnant with our second child and he threw me on the ground and choked me, I knew I had to go then for sure. He also told me he would drug me when I didn't know it and get me committed to a mental institution so that he could get the kids. That's when I promised myself I would go back to school so I could support my kids after the divorce, and I did. Luckily, my father paid for school and my aunt babysat some of the time so that I could go to school part-time. He went to federal prison. That's when I divorced him and finished school because I knew he couldn't retaliate while in prison. I stayed 3.5 years after the choking incident so I could be financially able to take care of us. If there's one thing I would have done very differently, I would have gotten out sooner because the kids would have not had the attachment they had. That is a very powerful story. And whether you can relate to the entire thing or not, I hope that you can understand my point when I say that certain things are clear warning signs that you need to take action on. Financial issues in marriages and relationships are very common, and very often they point to deeper issues within the individual. And this is something that I reinforce with clients that I work with the firm approach all the time. So if you are facing similar challenges to the people that I just described, then I encourage you to reach out and get help. It does not have to be from me. The other thing I encourage you to do, whether you're in a happy marriage or maybe an unhappy marriage, is to always maintain your financial power. And in some cases, take your power back. If your partner is hiding financial information or controlling how you spend money, or you feel like they're holding you financially hostage, then I need you to formulate a game plan so that you can do something about this, hopefully sooner rather than later. One of the last things that may be a common sign that your marriage, your relationship is in trouble is if one of the partners has checked out. The reality is most people don't check out of a marriage overnight. But if you find that you're spending less quality time together, your date nights are few and far between, your fights are increasing, it could really be a sign that the person is disconnecting or has checked out from the relationship. Now, maybe there's a good reason and you know what that reason is. So that means that whatever you're experiencing is a seasonal issue and it's not indicative of a long-term problem. However, you know your partner better than I do. So I'm going to share a couple of more stories just to see if it's something that you can relate to. I knew the moment I officially moved out, I was firm that if he let me leave, I was never coming back. And he let me leave. And ain't nobody got time for that. We even messed around a bit after I moved out, but there was no reconciling at that point. Second story. I did not look at her as my prize. She was just another woman. Had no desire or energy to work on the faults. In my mind, if I saw her in a romantic setting with another man, I would not be upset. And that's when I knew it was over. When you listen to those stories and you can relate a bit, it could be because you have negative feelings toward your partner and maybe you've checked out. Maybe you can't stand to see their face when they walk in the room, or you cringe when you hear their name or when they touch you. These are signs of trouble in your marriage. Doesn't mean that it can't be solved, but it does mean that you might need to take some action. Now, your final hat trick may be some outside intervention, which is perfectly okay. There is no shame in that. That outside intervention may be a couples therapist or marriage counseling, or it could involve a divorce lawyer. Either way, it's your call. You have to do what's right for you. If you feel like the marriage can't be saved, then please check out our video, How to Secretly Prepare for Divorce. And if you want to get a few more tips and read a few more stories about personal experiences, the link to this very blog post is in the description. I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to the Firm Approach channel and give me your thoughts in the comments. Patience and progress. I'm Nikki Tucker with the Firm Approach.